I don't care how many shooters he sends. Johnny Guns will never run me out of my own studio.
Johnny Guns? West Los Records Johnny Guns? I thought he was dead.
Oh, he's about to be.
Music has been in Dr. Dre's blood from the very start. The man who would one day revolutionize the hip-hop game started working as a DJ in his teens, and his first major success came not long after as a member of the rap group N.W.A. Later on in his career, he'd co-found Death Row Records, and his first solo album, The Chronic, released in 1992, was one of the biggest hits of the decade. In fact, more than any other rapper, Dr. Dre is credited for moving away from the political stance and party vibes of old school rap in order to create gangsta rap. But as well known as he is for his rapping career, Dre would probably be the first to tell you that his true talent was as a producer, working for acts like Eminem and 50 Cent before diversifying even further and co-founding the company Beats Electronics, which would make him richer than damn near anything else he was ever a part of. What's going on, everybody? My name is CLYDE Smith. Today we are taking an updated look at the rise to fame of Dr. Dre, because here before they're famous, well, we know better than to forget about one of the most revolutionary hip-hop artists of all time. Recently, Dre is slated to perform at the Super Bowl halftime show alongside Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Kendrick, and Mary J. Blige, so the anticipation is at an all-time high. I, for one, can't wait to see the performance, but in the meantime, I thought we'd update the bio that we made for him a few years back, so let's get into his story. Dr. Dre was born Andre Young on February 18, 1965 in Compton, California. His parents, Theodora and Verna Young, were aspiring musicians. In fact, Verna was a part of a group known as the Four Aces, and her husband was a member of an R&B band called Romel's, a moniker his son would carry with him as his middle name for the rest of his life. His parents had Dre quite young. We're talking about 16 and 15 years old respectively, and life was certainly not easy. When Dre was only a year old, he lost his baby brother to pneumonia. Friends and family began to criticize Verna and believed that she would either lose Dre or that he would never make anything of himself. Then, when Dre was only 3 years old, his parents separated. Verna would go on to remarry a few years later and have 3 more children. As his family was growing, so too was Dre's love and passion for music. From the age of 4, Dre became fascinated with his family's record player, and this helped shape his love for the art form.
I don't do it for the money. The money is gonna come. I do it because of the love that I have for it. You know what I'm saying? If I was a plumber or something like that, I still would make hip-hop records. That's how much love I have for it.
Dre's mom would later remarry for a 3rd time, which would bring rapper Warren G into Dre's ever-increasing extended family. But at this point, Dre was spending most of his time living with his grandmother in the Wilming Arms housing projects. Needless to say, growing up in Compton was not easy. In addition to constantly being harassed by the police, there was an ever-present gang violence that Dre would have to navigate his way through basically every day of his life. In fact, he was forced into leaving Vanguard Junior High School and transferred to Roosevelt Junior High for his freshman year of high school. Dre attended Centennial, but poor grades forced him into transferring once again, this time to Fairmount High School in South Central Los Angeles. As a teenager, Dre had an undeniable passion for music, but he saw it more as a hobby than a potential career choice. As a youngster, Dre had his eyes set on becoming a pilot, even going so far as to enrolling in the Northrop aviation program, where he was not accepted due to his poor grades. During his time in high school, Dre also showed a natural talent for drafting, but ultimately his interest would lie outside of schoolwork, because as a teenager, Dre finally decided that music was to be his future. I don't know what drafting means, I thought it meant DJ, but let's go with drafting. In 1984, Dre received a music mixer as a Christmas gift, and before anybody knew it, he turned his family home into his own personal studio. He'd work for hours and hours on ends, taking snippets of other songs and sounds to create his own masterpiece. Dre spent a lot of time hanging around the clubs in Compton, so he knew that the hip-hop scene was increasing in popularity. That led him to Eve After Dark, where he eventually got his chance to work the turntables. After meeting fellow rapper DJ Yella, they both joined the world-class Wrecking Crew, which performed at nightclubs around town. Dre developed his own persona to stand out, originally called Dr. Dre, before evolving into Dr. Dre, the master of mixology. This stage name was largely inspired by his favorite basketball star at the time, Dr. J, Julius Erving. Eventually, Dre felt as if he had grown past the need to be a part of the Wrecking Crew. They had a pretty big hit track called Surgery, but Dre felt that he was being held back artistically and wasn't being given any type of creative control because he was considered the baby of the group. In 1986, Dr. Dre met Ice Cube for the very first time, a rapper who was under contract at Ruthless Records, a label owned and operated by another local rapper named Eazy-E. Not long after meeting, Dre would get arrested for owning an outstanding $900 parking ticket. Eazy-E would help him pay his fine, and after that, Dre began to help out around Ruthless Records, where he was given far more creative control than he ever had before.
Every project, we had some kind of little argument about what the project should be creatively, and I would say we would probably still be doing that, but at the same time getting the work done and probably doing something amazing.
From the smallest beginnings usually comes something great, and with all the talent circling around Ruthless Records, it was only a matter of time before N.W.A was born, the pioneers of the hip-hop genre. The group released their debut album, Straight Outta Compton, in 1988, featuring singles like Express Yourself and, of course, The Police. Needless to say, the album was controversial. The release was surrounded with accusations of glamorizing gang life and acts of misogyny. But all this controversy only drummed up more album sales. And I mean, how could it not? Suddenly everything in N.W.A.'s life was completely different. Fancy cars, big houses, wild parties. It was the best of times for Dr. Dre. But it was also the worst of times after his younger brother Tyree was attacked and murdered in the streets of Los Angeles. Dre was personally grieving, but he did his best to not let it show, instead letting the world know how he felt about what happened in his song The Message. Eventually, N.W.A. came to an end, and fighting and strife with management split the group. After meeting with Suge Knight, who strong-armed Eazy-E into releasing Dr. Dre from Ruthless Records' contract, Dre and Suge went on to form Death Row Records in 1991. They set up to work immediately, recruiting up-and-coming acts like Snoop Doggy Dogg and Tupac. Then Dre released his own album called The Chronic in 1992, which featured tracks like Let Me Ride, Little Ghetto Boy, and Ain't Nothing But a G Thing, which is widely considered to be one of the best hip-hop songs of all time. And not to gloss over it either, ladies and gentlemen, this, without question, is one of the best hip-hop albums of all time. Dre explained his thought process behind the album to Rolling Stone, saying, "I needed a record to come out. I was broke. I didn't receive one fucking quarter in the year of 92, because Ruthless spent the year trying to figure out ways to not pay me so that I'd come back on my hands and knees." Death Row Records held strong until the spring of 95, when Dre finally grew tired of Suge Knight's ever-increasing strong-arm tactics. Dre left the label in the summer of 96 to form his own company, Aftermath. He declared gangsta rap as dead, and his first release, Dr. Dre Presents, The Aftermath, received considerable media attention. The album ultimately wasn't that successful sales-wise, but Dre's sophomore album, simply titled 2001, released in 1999, I know a lot of people get confused about that, was pretty successful. It also scored him a Grammy for Best Rap Performance for Forget About Dre. Then in 1999, Dre unleashed Eminem onto all our unsuspecting ears. After a 1-2 punch like that, Dre and his entire stable of rappers had become an epic phenomenon.
Yeah, all I know is I'm upstairs, I'm listening to my Will Smith CD, and I seen all these flames going everywhere. You know what I'm saying?
Dre won a Grammy for his work on the Marshall Mathers LP, and later on in his career would capture 2 more, both for his later work on the Eminem album, Relapse. Dre added a ton of new artists to his label throughout the 2000s, some of which went on to become household names like 50 Cent, The Game, and Kendrick Lamar. Meanwhile, Dre kept himself busy with other endeavors as well, like branching out into acting in films like Training Day, which is one of the most important movies to black culture, just needed to throw that in there.
What up, killer?
I can't call it. What's up with you? I've been hearing a lot of shit on these streets, man. You all right?
It's all good. I talked to the 3 wise men. Everything is lovely.
As much as fans enjoyed Dre's multi-talented nature, they were all clamoring for his third album with the announced title of Detox. The album would ultimately never materialize over a decade of false starts and stops. Tracks would get leaked, but nothing substantial would come from it, as Dre stuck to producing more than performing. In 2008, Dre released his first brand of headphones titled Beats by Dr. Dre. The brand would prove to revolutionize the headphone business and became so popular that it resulted in a massive sale to Apple, who bought the brand for $3 billion. That's right, $3 billion for headphones. It's crazy.
I'm the first billionaire in hip-hop right here for West Coast, believe it.
The deal increased Dre's net worth to an estimated $800 million, making him the richest rapper in the world at the time, according to Forbes. And to this day, Dre is still in the top 3 of richest rappers, thanks large in part to this deal. Then in 2015 came the moment that all Dre fans were waiting for, the announcement of a new album, Compton. A soundtrack was timed to release alongside the N.W.A. biopic, Straight Outta Compton, a film that would go on to gross over $200 million worldwide and receive a nomination for an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. In 2016, Dre and the entire N.W.A. roster was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, solidifying their place in the history of popular music.
Dr. Dre! Dr. Dre! The scientist.
On January 6, Dr. Dre did suffer a brain aneurysm in his Los Angeles home, where he was taken by ambulance to hospital and placed in the intensive care unit. Dre apparently was stable and lucid the whole time and made a full recovery. However, it was around that time that things really started to hit the fan regarding his marriage with Nicole Young. In July of 2021, it was announced that they had finalized their divorce of 26 years. It was reported that Young had won big in terms of spousal support, apparently walking away with a $100 million settlement. While I think it needs to be said, $100 million is an absurd amount of money in pretty much any scenario, Dre is, however, considered hip-hop's first billionaire and constantly has an array of lucrative businesses going on, so it's not like the settlement brought him anywhere close to being broke. I mean, he's Dr. Dre. In 2021, Dre began working with Rockstar for GTA Online by actually putting him at the center of one of the new missions put in the game. Dre also recently released a mixtape titled GTA that features brand new music from himself, Eminem, as well as Nipsey Hussle, just to name a few. Most recently, Dr. Dre is slated to perform at the Super Bowl halftime show alongside Kendrick Lamar, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, and Mary J. Blige, which has created a whole lot of anticipation, especially after the cinematic trailer that Pepsi dropped to hype it up. And I think we're all waiting for that moment for when that Still Dre piano drops. I don't know, you just know the whole arena is gonna go crazy. Lots to look forward to. But as for the rest of Dr. Dre's story, well, I think this video ends right here. After all, this is before they were famous. What did you guys think about Dr. Dre's come up? Please be sure to let us know in the comments down below. Don't forget to follow on Instagram at Before They Were Famous to vote on what you'd like to see next. And I'll see you guys in another video.